We're here today talking with Chris Neto, Market Development Manager at Starin, and he's responsible for experience and engagement. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to finally be here.
Absolutely. So I've been following you on LinkedIn and watching you on Twitter, and what you're doing is amazing. So today we're going to kind of talk with Chris about social presence, the AV industry trends, some home office tips, and kind of where the future of video conferencing is going. So let's start off. Chris, you have a strong social presence on LinkedIn and Twitter, as I mentioned, and you have a knack for driving engagement in UCaaS and SaaS industries. So what are some tips that you would give to listeners who are trying to derive their brand awareness and engagement?
Well, after being in the industry for about 20 years in AV, actually starting in the I guess the video conferencing integration space back in '98 with a little company that was installing Polycom equipment all over the country. And now 20 years later, here I am working for Starin as a distributor. I've ran the gamut of different things and been in different roles. But 20 years, and the reason why I brought up my 20 years in the business, after 20 years, I finally have gotten to the point where my mom knows what I do. When I tell my mom I work with Zoom and I do Zoom rooms and I do video conferences, it's not foreign to her anymore. That's great because that was a hard one to explain to them why I went to college and why they invested in me going to college and what I was going to do when I got out. And I, like most other people, I kind of just fell into this industry. So some of the advice I have is during this COVID lockdown period, we've seen the rise and the spike in video. It's always been there for AV professionals. We've kind of used it, but we've always been like the shoeless cobbler's kids. We've always sold the product, but never really used it. So in this time, we've really put some time into using the equipment and developing different ways of using the equipment. From a sales perspective, nobody's ever made video sales calls or video cold calls. Now you're starting to see some of that. As you can see from my background, when I first got into the quarantine, I didn't have funky lights and a setup. I had a home office that was a spare room. As a matter of fact, some people were critical about that. You know, dude, you're got 5 doors and the doors behind you, and that's what kind of background is that? And you call yourself a video guy, and I'm like, what? You're right. 20 years in this business, I never really thought about where I sat and what the look behind me was. So now you're starting to see some things change in how we present ourselves, how we use video. Like I said before, in sales, people are upping their game after about 2 weeks of being home and locked in using the laptop, cameras and microphones. People upgraded. They weren't looking good. They weren't sounding good. So all of a sudden, here comes the mad rush on the USB cameras. That's all what we do, right? We've been preaching and talking about great video and great video quality, yet when we first got into this lockdown period, the first thing we did was just flip open a laptop and try to do business as usual. We're better than that. Right, and we're proving that to a lot of people. We're showing that to a lot of people and customers and clients that, hey, there is a better one step above, and better optics, some little bit of lighting, some background can really help what we do.
Absolutely. So I know that you're really big on UC trade shows like InfoComm that recently happened, and you're kind of known to be an exciting host. You drive that experience. So since COVID-19, many of the trade shows have been canceled, right? So how have you been staying busy while driving engagement and customer experiences?
Well, see, the trade shows are great. You know, as a traditional AV person, I couldn't wait for June to come around because I got to go to InfoComm. And if I was lucky, I would be able to go to ISC in February and see what comes out on the European side. And ISC is a little different because they actually bring the CEDIA portion or the home residential side of the business into the mix. So you get two different flavors of AV or pro AV. But going to the trade shows was, to be honest with you, it was great for the technology and get to see some of the new stuff and play with, you know, projectors and LED and video conferencing and, you know, see what's new. With that gone, left a kind of a hole there, right? So how do we do that? So we go to the well, what we know best, right? So in the previous question, you asked me about my social presence. I've been building a social presence for the last 10, maybe 11 years. And part of that was connecting on LinkedIn, start developing my LinkedIn profile, working with Twitter and broadcasting. My Twitter, LinkedIn, and trade shows all connect in a sense because as my presence grow, I was also then asked by magazines to cover trade shows. So I got to go behind the scenes. I got to see things that people didn't see on a daily basis that I never saw. You know, at the time, I'd never worked for a manufacturer. So uh, getting that behind the scenes look and access was really cool of how things are done. As a nerd, as an AV nerd, seeing how, you know, what goes in and what comes out and the all the little minutia in the middle was the fun part. So to be able to take that and bring that back was great. When you take it to a virtual show, you lose that piece of it. And more importantly, what you lose is the reason why most of us go to a trade show, whether we want to admit it or not. It's for networking, right? As a person who, you know, not only engages with crowds, I love to be in person with them. I'd search for people out. You know, we meet at the Crestron booth, at the Zoom booth, at the Starin booth, at the various booths out there. And that's how I make my connections. That's all part of building up my presence, which now I've pretty much now live online. Prior to this, because I've had the social presence, it was a very easy transition for me to basically just come on camera and talk. I do that on a daily basis, whether it's writing on Twitter or on LinkedIn or posting on even on my personal Instagram. I'm constantly out and showing what I'm doing. The difference now is that now other people are home. So now I'm getting that back and forth, which is unique. And when you sprinkle in the ability to add live video, I do more Zoom calls on a daily basis now, not necessarily within my own team at Starin or with Midwich, but with people that I've connected with on Twitter that are like, hey, that's an interesting camera you set up you got there. Can you show me? Here, boom, here's my invite. Just meet me in my Zoom room. And all of a sudden we're talking about USB cameras. They noticed I have a D10 in the background. I go on a whiteboard, I show different things, but I'm built that way. And I've been prepared for that for the last 10 years. So maybe I got lucky in this kind of weird time.
Yeah, you know, you talk about your home office setup. I think it's, you know, really cool. I'm trying to step up my home office game as well, because when I first started working from home, you know, I work for a university. So when you're at home, I didn't even have a good desk, right? So I had to upgrade my desk, upgrade my cameras. I've been testing all type of Zoom enabled equipment, and it's been fun. But on your home office setup, specifically your lighting and camera, what are some pro AV tips that home users you would give to home users to step up their game, and especially when it comes to video conferencing and Zoom calls?
Yeah, no, that's no problem. The background is usually the afterthought. So don't think that because you're watching me and I have this funky lighted background that, A, it's fancy, right? I'm pro AV, but this was very DIY in my mindset. Like you couldn't buy a lot of products. Products were hard to find, or they would take a while to ship. So I wasn't adding to that. There's masks and PPE equipment that need to be traveled through post. So I'm not adding to that. What I did do was I just quickly ran to Home Depot and did a little bit of what I learned in college about lighting, right? Uplighting, backlighting, mixing colors and stuff like that. So I did, quite frankly, it's a very simple background. If I was to turn all these fancy lights off, you'll see that it's just a standard bedroom. There's nothing fancy. I have a credenza and an old TV, but all you're looking at, I'm playing with shadows. I'm playing with light. This is all part of kind of the classes that I kind of took in college. I should have pulled out my old college books and went through those. But that's what I did to just improve my background, just to make me stand out, right? To pop out a little bit. There's 3-point lighting that you need to look at, but there's a wonderful resource out there called YouTube, and many professionals do not want to relegate themselves to saying, I'm just going to go to YouTube. You can learn a lot from people that are out there just posting these quick videos on how to do lighting, and they've uncovered some really cool stuff for me. As far as what we do on an AV perspective and the video call, first and foremost, before COVID, I got super lucky in that I upgraded my home internet from standard cable modem to fiber. So being on the Verizon Fios thing has enabled me to be able to do better, more solid connections. I used to get made fun of whenever I joined a podcast that whenever I took a hit that it was my Jersey internet. that was constantly, that my Jersey internet was having a bad day. And that's true. That's because when everybody came home, the way the cable modems work, your bandwidth all comes from the same pipe. So somebody's going to have to take a hit. And with 2 kids home, all they do is stream all day. Granted, it's Xbox, FaceTime, and Snapchat and streaming audio in one room, and Netflix and FaceTime and streaming audio in another room, and me trying to hold a video call and still run a business. That's tough. So moving to fiber was the first and foremost. As far as our audio and video setup, it should be easy for us on the AV side. But for people that are watching this that are not really familiar with it, the first thing you got to do is upgrade your camera. No matter what your company has given you on a laptop, it is not great. I love to say this to Mac people, because people that love Mac absolutely go bananas for anybody who, is telling them to move away from Mac. Listen, you can choose whatever platform you want. I don't care if it's Mac or Windows, but upgrade those cameras. The optics on a camera are going to be 100 times better than what you have. And even at times, some of those cameras have better microphone capabilities, will have better microphone capabilities than the ones currently in your very nice laptop. The other thing is, I'm also somebody who believes that, especially with the big corporations, when they give you a laptop, they're giving you a laptop for work. They're not giving you a laptop that is built for audio and video, right? When I spent 13 years on site working with a pharmaceutical company as an on-site engineer, our laptops were good enough. I hate that term, right? They were good enough. They got the job done. They were great for what we needed to do as far as internet access. But when it came time to walk into my conference rooms where I had wireless display sharing and control systems connecting and VGA connections and HDMI connections, the video boards, depending on what you were doing on your computer, would choke because there wasn't enough memory available in those, big purchase computers. So don't think that what you have sitting in front of you is good or able to have more than, a few windows open and still drive good video. So take the pressure off your video board. Try to get yourself a USB camera or an outside system that can do this. Not only from a USB perspective, get yourself, right now, the systems that I use, I have a HuddleCam HD Pro, which is the new 4K camera. I have the Hudley. I have some Aver cameras. Those are all great optics that they put into the systems. And there's plenty of cameras out there that work really well with specifically for Zoom and are built for Zoom. The other thing that I use as well is I don't have a fancy audio setup. I could, if I was to cut over what I'm using right now and go to like my podcast setup, because I kind of have a separate USB mixer board and a nice microphone attached via XLR and doing all those fancy things, but you don't need to do that. Big thing that I do is look for something that is portable and able to move. So with me, I'm currently recording this on a Yamaha YVC 200, small little speaker microphone combo. I can grab this and grab my USB camera and I can walk out the door, if it was allowed, go to a Starbucks, sit down, try to use their free Wi-Fi and connect. Or I'll just use my hotspot, whatever the same. So I have a mobile setup and I have a more permanent setup for doing video. That's my best thing. Get out of the laptop, get yourself a better camera, get yourself a better microphone. And even invest in a desktop tripod. That was something that we talked about offline. The desktop tripod will help get your camera to eye level, as you can see here. A standard laptop folded with a camera on top is going to give you that nose up, unflattering shot. So a lot of different things you want to take into consideration.
Yeah, those are great tips. And the one thing that really expounded upon that you said is you don't have to do it and spend a ton of money. Like with your DIY projects, you did that from some Home Depot lights, but, definitely invest in the best camera that you can get your money on. And I agree, I started on my MacBook and I thought that camera was good until I looked at other people and I'm like, their camera game is much better than mine. So I upgraded as well. I'm using a Logitech Brio and it works well. We talk at times about some changes that's happened during COVID-19 and specifically what businesses have to endure.
Mhm.
And I believe we've seen a bit of a paradigm shift for many businesses that had to embrace the work from home revolution. So, in your opinion, what does that landscape look like after COVID-19? Because recently, and I'm in Florida, you're in Jersey, but we were told that the cases have been rising because the state has opened up. So it looks like for us that things are kind of going to go backwards a little bit. But once COVID's over, what's your perspective on that? Do you think people will still work from home, or do you think it will change?
Uh, it is that is a tough question, honestly, because you're fighting a couple different fronts on this, and the fights are tough. It's a cultural issue, right? You Technology, we kind of got down right? We know we can send anybody home at any time and work from home, whether they're, especially on, the certain workers can do that, right? Not all jobs, obviously. If you're in the warehouse or packing or shipping department, you can't work from home. But a lot of the jobs that are out there that don't involve, the physical hands-on can be remote. But it's a cultural issue, right? I don't have that issue where I work at Starin because I am remote at Starin. Starin's based in Indiana. And we obviously have our parent company out in the UK, and we commute back and forth. I mean, not commute, excuse me, communicate back and forth. Imagine if I was commuting back and forth to the UK. That'd be funny. Anyway, but that, we have that ability to be remote and move around. Right now, I've heard horror stories of people that have to be at their desk at 7 o'clock in the morning just because there's never really a solid answer to why do you have to be there? Why do you have to commute into New York? Right? In my case, there are jobs that are mandatory. You have to be there. Why? Right? I think this is now starting to change a lot of the company culture and a lot of the mindsets for from ownership to people, because now you're kind of creeping into like an HR issue, right? If you don't
Yeah.
need the people there, are you going to risk them getting sick? And more so, are you going to risk them infecting others, or do you want to have that on your head? So I think this is starting to help change a lot of those old school traditional mindset of you got to be at your desk from 8 to 5, and this is what you got to do. And if you're not there, we're going to come looking. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen before where people were, they went into open space, and open space was a weird time for corporate because they couldn't figure that out. Now your bosses were out in open space, and they were constantly looking at you, and you were constantly looking at them. And if you got up and went to go get coffee, you felt bad because everybody turned and looked at you because you got up in a super quiet office. Oh my God, it was the fishbowl. It was horrible. I mean, I'm an active, kind of lively person. I talk with my hands, as you can see, and I'm on a phone and I'm animated, and I can't do that in a room where people are giving me death stares, right? So open office was kind of the weird situation too in between all this. So now I think things are going to change. I think work from home is going to happen, and technology has proven that we can do it. Now it's up to the company and the culture of the businesses to say, you know what, let's save on commercial real estate, right? Let's save
Okay.
on some of these expenses. Let's tweak our perks. Because you got to remember something. Some of the things that were offered to people to be on site, and we all read those stories in Forbes and the New York Times and all that, where people got free lunches and these perks to be at the office all hours. And we give you ping pong tables and pool tables and free sodas and happy hour Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And that's all going to change. If we're going to work from home, how are those perks? How are you now going to attract people to come work for you? Right. And I think a lot of that is going to be an investment in the technology and mobility and the programs and the proper gear to get you out and about.
Yeah, I agree. My wife, she is a software developer for a government contractor, and she was just informed that they're now moving forth with changing their carbon footprint. So they're downsizing buildings, and she was just told you can now work from home all the time. So it's kind of exciting. I've got my wife has an office partner, so I can go give her a hug and kiss in between meetings, and that's actually cool for me. Um, you know,
You know what, Jason? You didn't bring it up though, but I mean, nobody is really talking about it. But we are actually in the whole world is in the biggest work from home experiment that we'll ever be in. And think about this: there's a lot of things that are happening during this time of work from home. A lot of people have had to change the way they do business. And I just had this same conversation with Bill Mullen from Starin. I said, when are we ever going to be in this type of pressure cooker again, where our mindsets of what do we do, how do we do this, quick thinking, get creative real quick, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And we're jotting down every single note of, all right, this is a great idea. Let's shelve it for now. Let's move to the next thing. Kind of reminding Bill, say, hey man, we have these things that he refers to as jam sessions, where we're throwing out ideas. Save all those ideas, because we are in this real world setting where we have to make very fast, very quick decisions and get hyper creative when we have this pressure on us. We're never going to have this again, right? We're going to be kind of used to this going forward, but being in the moment of, think about what we can do that differentiates yourself. What are we doing for our clients? How are we being more empathetic towards their needs? Because right now things are changing. So we're jotting all these notes down. And if there is one side benefit that has been to being in quarantine and being under this COVID thing, is that we've gotten very creative, and we've had to be very quick with decisions. We can't stagger along, because if you don't make a decision on something that happens or changes right away, just look at what Zoom's doing. Zoom gets pinged with something, and they have to turn and burn real quick, and they solve problems very quickly and add it to
Yes,
their
they do.
So, I mean, we're all under that same stress, whether you are a manufacturer, a distributor, an integrator. We're all having to find new ways to get creative in how we get our products to our customers and how we service our customers the best.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier of being in Pro AV for quite some time. So, I've supported back in the old Tandberg days when it was SD type cameras, and now it's full 4K type of video and immersive experiences. So the video conferencing world has truly changed. But for the rest of the world that hasn't been in the video conferencing industry, they've been thrust into that in the last 3 or 4 months. And many users that haven't traditionally been required to be on camera, they try to turn their cameras off. But as you and I know, that experience of seeing the person and feeling that inflection, it's a more personable experience. But that said, this new synchronous technology, in your opinion, where is this video conferencing going, especially with the rest of the world?
Well, it's funny because we're sitting here and, we've been doing this for a while, and we're kind of used to what we know and the people that we deal with. So I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about kids, right? The generation that's coming up, because the generation that's coming up is video first. We're laying foundations right now for what they already know. My kids will video before they will answer the phone. There's a funny story that I tell about my daughter and her friend about 2 years ago. They were about 13 years old, and we were leaving my house, and this is before I got unlimited on my cell phone. My cell phone bill was always out of control. As soon as my kids started getting cell phones, my data rates went nuts, so I had to go to unlimited. But 2 years ago, I wasn't in that, or it was about 3 years ago, I didn't have it. We got into the phone. My daughter was on a FaceTime with her friend, and we got into the car. I said, well, Angelique, please tell me that you're going to call her or have her call you, because we're getting out of the Wi-Fi. So she says that, and I hear me on the other line say, what do you mean call? I said, call her on the phone. She goes, how? At 13 and using a phone the way they use it, she never goes to the dial pad. She doesn't know a telephone number, right? She didn't know where the dial pad was, right? I can't imagine. My daughter was in the car just this year. My wife made a call and was trying to get through to a line, and the busy signal came up. My daughter thought something broke in the car. She's like, what is that? At 14, because my daughter just turned 15 yesterday, at 14, my daughter discovered the busy signal. I said, wow, when I was in college, when I was growing up, that was the sound of, you're not getting concert tickets. You better continue dialing that phone and redialing and hitting redial. So this is the generation that's coming up. They are more apt to picking up a phone, getting in front of a camera, super comfortable in front of a camera, to be honest with you. I've been doing this for 20 years. My first job with the video conferencing company before I even hit the road was sitting in front of a camera that was always facing me because I was playing with either Polycom or Sony video conferencing systems back in the day, testing out the systems, upgrading the cameras, seeing if the cameras work, testing cameras that came back. I got very comfortable in front of cameras very quickly, right? So maybe I'm a little different because here I am in my 40s and I don't have a problem getting on video and how I talk, and I've never had any TV experience. My kids, on the other hand, naturals. Oh, Dad, you can't take a selfie like that. You got to raise it up a little bit. You want a flattering shot. I'm like, did you go to school for this? Like, how did you figure this out? Ring lights. They got the ring lights in their stuff. So I'm worried about the group that's in right now in our industry, right? Getting them to figure out that this is okay, right? It's almost like as if we have to spend some therapy sessions with them over video calls to say, listen, it's okay to turn on your camera. I don't care that there's a laundry basket behind you. Go for it. You want to have better video etiquette? Don't have it. Clean it up. But for the purpose of this one-on-one conversation, video is the way to go. Because the generation that's going to come now, as my son enters college, they're ready for video. And if they don't have video, they're going to laugh at you and they won't get work done because they're going to want to do it their way. And whether that is via FaceTime or Zoom, let them practice on the Snapchat apps and the Zoom, not the Zoom apps, but the FaceTime apps and whatever that they have to play with. Get that practice. They're going to be super comfortable and get ready because when the 20-somethings start calling you on video and we're now the older generation, we now have to turn on those cameras because it's going to be expected of us. So
Absolutely.
It's adapt or adapt or evolve. I don't know which one you want to call it.
Absolutely. You know, my youngest, who is 6, he graduated kindergarten over Zoom, and you know, I posted it to social media on LinkedIn, and it just kind of went crazy. But you're right. I mean, we're teaching them young. They're changing, and I think we can learn a lot from our own kids, right? Speaking of video conferencing, as many people know, I'm a huge Zoom supporter. People call me an evangelist, but I would call you an evangelist as well. You're a big advocate of Zoom as well. So you use Zoom in your daily grind. What new features would you like to see from the Zoom ecosystem?
Wow, that's a tough one. Because every time I turn around, there is a new feature popping up.
Sure.
You know, it's funny because I'm finding ways to use Zoom that maybe other people are not looking, right? And part of that is I build community, right? So my responsibility on these social platforms that I'm on, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, is, you know, how do I get people to network, right? You asked me about InfoComm before and the component of networking. How do we do this? Zoom, I incorporate into my networking piece. A friend of ours that we both have in common, Paul Richards from PTZ Optics, he brings Zoom into his live streams to add an engagement or interactive component to it, right? So let's think about this. Paul's doing this not because he saw some AV guy doing it. He's doing this because this is exactly what the YouTube generation is doing, right? Minus maybe the Zoom component because they'll do a lot in post-production, but Paul's live streaming and bringing in people, bringing in the crowd using Zoom, which is a great application. I take the Zoom idea of multiple people in rooms, and I host a virtual happy hour. There's many different components of how you can do a virtual happy hour. I've heard companies have sent wine tasting to people, and they all get on a big Zoom call, and everybody tastes wine, and there's a sommelier kind of explaining what the wine is. I simplify it a little more. I do a virtual happy hour and try to recreate what it is you find in a bar. So minus the drinks, I call it BYOD meets BYOM. We get into the call. BYOD meets BYOB. So you bring your own beer to this, you sit down, you have a conversation. I had a room with 300 people. That's chaos. Chaos in a nutshell. You haven't experienced 300 lit rooms in Zoom, by all means, come to a happy hour, or at least the one that we did with InfoComm, and see what chaos is. 5 pages, and it just kept going of people. But what I do is I create these extra rooms. which are the breakout rooms. And I purposely set up those breakout rooms so that we can send groups of maybe 10 people into these spaces. So now that 300-person main room shrinks down to these nice little small networking groups of 10 to 6 people. And it really allows people were very skeptical coming into a happy hour that they were actually going to be able to network. And they've gotten really good connections based out of that. I originally kind of came up with the concept, not so much for, hey, we need to network. It's not happening these days. But the concept actually came because a lot of people were losing their jobs. Unfortunately, with furloughs and the economic conditions that we're going through right now, people started losing jobs. So there was some time on their hands and they were looking to network. So I kind of put that all together and it worked as a kind of that perfect storm. So the breakout rooms are great. It's how you use them. I don't know how you can really improve Zoom as far as features go. I'd have to really think. There's some things that I think would come up, but I am such a straightforward user of it on my day-to-day basis. It's a call here, call back, straight call in. Here's my number, call in. The thing that really drives what I do with Zoom is its simplicity, right? I'd have never had anybody tell me, I don't know how to use this.
True.
And as long as they continue with that, as long as it's easy, I will continue using it because I have no complaints coming from somebody who just hits a button and jumps into my meeting. So if you want to create other features and stuff like that, I'm perfectly happy with the way things are right now. I'm sure there are people that may watch this and say, yeah, they got to add some security features to it. And that is an ongoing thing that will forever be there. So I'm not sitting here questioning whether they're thinking about security. I think security is always happening and always on their mind. You have to as a company. But from feature set perspective, they got the one thing down that the others can't, which is simplicity. And that to me is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not just so much about features, but it's how you use it. I found a ton of use cases that Zoom probably doesn't even think of. Like over the last semester at our university, we used Zoom for virtual proctoring, right? So we had a system where you could lock the students down and make sure that they couldn't copy and paste and this and that, open any other programs, but you couldn't really see them. Right. So on a separate device, we took Zoom and was able to look at the student and make sure that they could see their hands and their keyboard and visualize them. And, it helped prevent academic dishonesty. So there are a ton of use cases, like you mentioned with the virtual happy hour.
I do have one, though, that I'd like to see. Maybe it has to be a separate system, but I need them to tweak their algorithm so that we can actually play music. Not play music, but to have you with the guitar, me with the drums, and another guy singing, and allow that to happen. Right now, it's fine tuned for us to have conferences, but it's not necessarily fine tuned for music for musicians to get on and play. Right?
Yeah, I have noticed that. I have a friend of mine. He actually is a voice instructor, and he plays the piano. And sometimes when the person's singing, he plays the piano, it kind of negates the sound on one side, and it needs to be more two-way in that aspect of it.
Yeah. They optimize it for what we do, and this is exactly what it's intended for video communications in this sense. But my son is a drummer, and he for a while was taking drum lessons via Zoom. And the instructor had an electronic drum kit on one side, and it was plugged in, and he got it through a mixer into the system. But it's not obviously the same because there was always that tweak off. But they did what they could with what they had. There's very few programs out there, or very few systems out there that actually allow musicians to do that sort of stuff. Most of it, when you're doing remote distance recording and stuff like that, is done locally and then transported over as a file system, as opposed to the in-the-moment live jam session. Because the day I can turn this on and see bands reunited, because one of the things that I love is there's a video of a YouTube show out there hosted by Josh Gad, who's a comedian. He brings together old TV shows and does like reunites old TV shows and, old cast members from this, or brings back old. I would love to see that, but from like, let's bring back, Led Zeppelin. Like, let's have them jam, right? Let's bring back another band. I think the band part of it is the toughest one. So that's why you're not seeing it. If they do it, it's all pre-recorded and stuff like that. So more of if they went down a musical route to allow that sort of stuff, I think musical for the people that like musicians, for example, absolutely, they can take advantage of this.
Yeah, so I would say Zoom, if you're listening, we need to be able to do these virtual jam sessions as Chris recommends.
We need the jam, man. And I'm not even that guy. I'm a former DJ. I don't play any instruments, but absolutely, I enjoy live music, and I would love to be able to see people just pull out guitars and do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So we were talking about the D10, you know, these touch type technologies. I have the Aver EP65 as well, and I have a D10 over here. I have like 6 Zoom rooms in my office. But on the D10 side, I noticed that they recently created a new product, and it's actually launching this month, the D10 Me, which is a 27-inch Zoom room that will actually fit on your desk, and you can take a pen and annotate right there. And I think there's a lot of value in that personalized telepresence experience. So what is your take on telepresence for the home and the various use cases for the future?
Well, telepresence always has been there. You know, it's funny that you mentioned me, and when you start talking that, it talk about work from home and all of a sudden we're talking about residential. That's how I take it, at least. It, I, the TV I have in my living room, I bought because back in the day it did Skype, right? It was an app, and the brand eventually, within 2 years of me having this, said we're not working with them anymore, and now I have a TV that doesn't do that. But the whole intention was that I had a TV in my living room with a camera that I was able to connect to my family anywhere I wanted to. So now it's kind of dead in the water, but the TV still works, is great. I just don't have that feature. But it's been done before, and people have gone down that road. I think that the video phone in the home has a purpose. I think you're now going to see residential integrators getting into that side of the business, where before, you know, I have friends in the residential side of the business, such as Todd Puma, who I've had these conversations with him. Where are the home offices? Where is video in the home? And, you know, it's been a tough conversation for them. For one, these residential guys have been spending a lot of time beefing up. 90% of their businesses now is home internet stuff, right? If you leave it to the cable guys to come and install your internet, it's okay, right? The residential guys are going in and adding, you know, the use of internet in the home doesn't just allow you to have just a simple router anymore in your basement and hope that it covers your house. So he's gotten heavy into the in-home networking component of it. Server rooms, essentially, or work rooms where, you know, you're sending signals throughout the house and it's solid across the board. Main complaints that he gets used to be, I want audio in my backyard. I want sound in my backyard. Get me some outdoor speakers, some rock speakers. That's changed. I want internet in my backyard is like the big thing.
Yeah.
Right? They need their internet to reach out there because they'll pop an Alexa out there, or they have Sonos. So it's kind of, the infrastructure for the home has been built over these last few years by the residential guys. It's almost a natural progression for them to add a camera and a sound bar, like one of the Polycom X30s, or like the all-in-one setups from a Yamaha, for example, where they can sit in the front and they can gather the family around, because it's not easy to sit around a laptop and say hi to grandma when you have 6 people in your house, right?
Yeah.
That was the whole intent of my TV in my living room. So I think that telepresence in the home has it. I've known that there's been one video conferencing company that experimented with this years ago, which I'll not name names. They did, and they came out with a product, and it was like $99 a month, and it was going to be telepresence for the home. And within 2 months, it disappeared off the shelves. Why? Because I heard that commercial people called them and said, why can't I have that $99 a month program in my office, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars to get telepresence? And telepresence is weird, because when you first say telepresence, my first cringe is $500,000 rooms that are built specifically for video conferencing, that were very, you know, closed ecosystem. You couldn't call out. It was super expensive to install, maintain, and keep up, but it was a great experience. And I think it served the purpose in the video conferencing history, in that timeline, because if it wasn't for telepresence showing that there could be better experience as far as one button touches and better audio and better video, I don't think we would have gotten to the point where we are now. So
Yeah, great.
there's proof somewhere in there.
Well, the final question I would ask you, and this question has been recently asked of me in a podcast that I did recently, but I'd be interested on your take on it. So, how do we foster innovation while keeping the lights on?
Did somebody really say that to you? Like
Absolutely.
random question? I would never ask that like in a bar. Wow, that's how do we foster innovation? You know, I don't like to prepare for these things, so I guess you really hit me with a stumped question. How do we foster innovation? Okay, repeat the question again. How do we foster
So,
innovation?
and I think this is specific in business
Mhm,
because people are working from home.
mhm.
So things have changed, right? The landscape's changed in how we do that. But some people are, or some businesses are not as successful because they're a service-based business. So the question is, how do we foster innovation while keeping the lights on?
Hmm. Well, I'm a big fan of chaos breeding creativity. So in that chaos, you'll find that there are things that are missing. Within Starin, for example, most of our business was focused at the corporate space or in the educational space or in obviously business focused. We're B2B. When work from home hit, how do we adjust? So we created work from home kits. Work from home kits are basically put together now for the now, right? You can get a Hudley Go and a Yamaha speaker, attach it to your computer, and it gets you better audio, better video, better quality all around. But on the same token, not only are these little cameras portable, but you can, when you eventually go back to the office, these work in the conference room space, right? So that shift of mentality, like how do you change things, right? There are people that are buying little $50 cameras off Amazon that are XYZ brand, and they don't care what it is. The optics are they're going to be better than whatever they have in their laptop, and they're okay with that. But when they go back to the office, that thing's going to get chopped. You're not going to be able to put that into a conference room space. So when you're building these kits out, it's the mindset. How do you get more value for the money, right? And I think the innovation is, you know, we were never a company that was going to be selling USB cameras to people on an e-commerce site. But with these kits, we found out that there's an e-form now currently in the home. It allows people to pull back a little bit more and then bring them into the office and become their system. So the investment is solid now, and it will carry over, and they can use it in their commercial space, or when the time comes that they go back into the office, they're ready to go back there, and they're still portable, so they can come and go. So I think that's a small little bit of innovation. The other part too, the innovation is that we're not slowly. My take on all these cameras. There are particular cameras that are going to win the fight or the race. It's not really a fight; it's a race, and that is the 120 field, the wide angle cameras that have the auto framing or the ability to do EPTC. And the reason why I say that is when social distancing comes back into play and into the vernacular of people that are back in an office, you are now going to find that rooms that once held in a corporate environment, 6 people, are now going to be meant for 3. So how do you do that? Your existing fixed lens camera can't do it because it's never was intended to space out 6 feet, right?
Right.
So now these nice little, wide angle auto framing cameras are a very easy, simple solution that comes right there. That kind of innovation, I think, is where it's going to be pushing camera manufacturers to go down that road, because now it's going to be a mixed bag. What can we buy from a camera perspective that we don't have to change if we need to add, more seats or less seats and space people out? So there's a lot of different changes happening there. I think that people are going to look, obviously those type of cameras, as you can tell by going online, are nowhere to be found, by the way,
Yeah, they're
outside
out.
of, with production shutdowns and people, the demand is so high, they're very hard to find. You know, you're going to find a lot of different innovation changing. I think that the corporate lobbies are going to change. not just from an experience perspective where everybody was just looking for like a wild theme park attraction in their lobby. I think they're going to be more purpose built, and they're going to be more focused around how people are going to use that building. If you can basically keep people in a lobby and meet there, as opposed to sending somebody up who may be sick and infect the floor, I think lobbies are going to change. Lobby designs are going to change. I think that even our theme parks attractions, that's going to go through a whole big change. We just are not. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, man. There's a lot of stuff coming, and it's going to be due to the chaos of what this is doing to us. We're going to have forced to start thinking differently, and it's really going to drive the creative people to be creative, and the ones that can't keep up, unfortunately, are not going to stick around. They won't be able to keep up because the old way of doing things and the old way of doing business is done.
You're right. You're right. So you and I are both going to be part of Presence Summit, which happens in a few weeks. Do you want to tell the listeners what Presence Summit is and how they can get a ticket to entry and what it's all about?
Awesome. So the Presence Summit is on July 15th. It's co-created or co-founded by HuddleCam and Paul Richards and Bill Mullen from Starin. They kind of got together and realized that there's a whole big thing that needs to happen that hasn't been happening for the AV people or the AV community, which is there's a need for what we do. Kind of like a little bit of hinting of what we talked about today about, work from home and video presence and how video has impacted and changed our world. How do we use that in business, right? I kept hinting at it's not just turning on a camera and going. Things are going to evolve, and part of that is personal development, and that's where the focus of Presence Summit is. Presence Summit is going to help get people, thinking differently in how they present not only themselves on video, how to better use video, how video has changed, and more importantly, they got some really great keynote speakers in, and specifically by a gentleman by the name of Joe Pine, who actually wrote the book about the experience economy. And this is an experience, right? You were kind of immersed in this. We talked about telepresence. Telepresence was trying to get you into that immersed environment. Video has carried that on. Now the telepresence is kind of left behind. And now we're in this new world of video, which is video from anywhere, right? Or work from anywhere. So it's how to rethink and how to use the current tools that we have and some of the tools that are coming in the future to better up your game. And a lot of video trade shows, a lot of virtual events have been focused around technology and product and discussion about, business. But I don't think anyone is really focused on the personal development side for a lot of the people that are in the industry. So I'm excited. I can't give away too much, but it has been noted that G Love will be performing. And yes, he will be in a room playing, and we will all be quiet. There will not be multiple things as we discussed before, but there's going to be a musical act involved as well. We're going to get a tour from Ariel Vieira, who I've seen as well, met in person, the urbanist out in New York. He's going to give us a virtual tour of New York. Imagine for people that have not been to New York recently to see the empty streets of New York. And he will give us a history tour because that's one of the things he does on his website. He'll give us a history tour, and you'll get to see what New York looks like, quiet and without traffic and without all that. So anyway, that is the Presence Summit. I don't want to reveal too much, but I encourage people to go to presencesummit.com and check it out. I'll be hosting an AV happy hour for them that night as well, which is basically a networking event afterwards where we all get to hang out and talk about certain things. I'm sure we're going to be talking about what's going on and the fact that we still do not have sports in this world, if that's your thing. So
True.
Join me at the AV happy hour there. But Presence Summit, July 15th, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be nice. I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised that, that we're able to pull something like this off, which is very different to what I guess the AV community has been watching for the last 3 months.
Yeah, I'm excited to be part of it. I have a guest speaking segment as well. So make sure that you go to presencesummit.com and check it out. The tickets are free. And Chris, It's been a pleasure, sir. I love picking your brain. You're a wealth of knowledge. And make sure that you follow Chris Neto on LinkedIn and Twitter. Chris, any final words, sir?
On Twitter, it's Chris_Neto. That's where you'll find me. LinkedIn, connect with me. I'm an open networker on LinkedIn. I use that. At the same time, I would ask you to also follow Starin on Twitter and on LinkedIn. That's the company who I work for, and give them a check. If you are an integrator, we can help you out on a lot of different things and a lot of different projects, especially when it comes to the UCC stuff and the Zoom ecosystem. That's kind of our one of our strengths. So feel free to reach out. I'm easy to get a hold of. I'm easily accessible. Thank you, Jason, for having me. This has been fun, and I look forward to doing it again. Next time, I'll ask you questions.
Absolutely. And until we can see each other face to face, sir, it's bye for now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.